Dungeons & Dragons has finally released its 2024 update to the Player's Handbook, the piddling offering for the 50th anniversary of the game, and a sad, pathetic update to the game in many ways. There are a few good bits of content sprinkled in, here and there, but for the most part, it adds next to nothing, and asks for another $50 for it. After 4 years of inflation, caused by people who the creators of D&D heartily support, that actually makes it a bit cheaper than the original 5th edition Player's Handbook. However, alongside the price, the quality of the book has depreciated as well. The art is even more laden with needless and pointless diversity. The art is cartoonish and soulless, and it looks like the same sort of obnoxious, fast-talking, flashy-colored animation used in ads in an attempt to evoke the old D&D cartoon or else Cartoon Network animation that many of the millennials now playing the game grew up with. Whatever sinister marketing ploy is behind it, it is jarring and unwelcome. The characters of the D&D cartoon are also shoehorned into the cover art for the character creation chapter. Another sign that nostalgia is all that D&D has left to work with. The class overview table is just embarrassing, with each class having a thing they quote-unquote like, such as the barbarian liking battles, the fighter liking weapons, and the cleric liking gods. Not a god, singular, but gods, plural. I guess the polyamory trend at Wizards of the Coast has spread to the philosophy of the game itself now, or perhaps not. And of course, species now replace races, lending a sterile scientific air to a fantasy game, which one would think would not sit well with the crowd that justifies every cartoonish dogshit natural 20 story with the phrase, "It's fantasy, it's heckin' fantasy, you can do anything." But one would be forgetting that this is the same crowd that also heckin' loves science and eagerly lined up for a dose of experimental science juice some years ago. And of course, species are less racist than races, and since they don't adjust ability scores anymore, it's fine. We can't allow bioessentialism in D&D, a game that was founded on such, and it's a surprise that these liberal twats have latched onto it so thoroughly when there was so much more work to do to rid it of its so-called problematic elements. But I digress. The new Player's Handbook is an exhausting exercise in mediocrity, in modern, soulless slop. Even the cover art contains the 2 required black characters, the faceless knight and random redhead. It is such utterly forgettable art, composed of such vague brushstrokes and no style or flair, nothing to make it truly art. The controversy over Wizards of the Coast using AI art seems quaint now, as their regular artists seem to be even more generic and forgettable than AI slop. Whoever would even care now? Aside from the stupid rules changes, like the way Ranger works with Hunter's Mark now, and the way they are dumbing down monsters to have spellcasting monsters get some special attack instead of spells, because a list of spells on an enemy is too difficult and thus gatekeeping, and we need to dumb down the complexity of running D&D to a tutorial mode. Which makes sense, because most D&D 5e players only play the game for 5 or 6 sessions in their entire lives, so they never even get a chance to leave behind the basics anyway. That said, perhaps that is for the best, given all the garbage in this book, from the guns that are now included in the Player's Handbook for the first time, alongside illustrations, to the continued inclusion of vicious mockery, a spell that reduces the bard to an obnoxious meme class all on its own. The Great Weapon Master feat is now just a straight damage bonus, further tipping the game toward favoring 2-handed weapons. At least now, you have to be level 4 to take it. And page 198 has a full-page illustration that seems to be something from a steampunk cosplay LARP event. One character in a wheelchair, wearing sunglasses from the 1960s, a man dressed like Sherlock Holmes, or maybe some Call of Cthulhu character, a black woman in an eye patch who looks like a pirate. The confluence of genres, none of which resemble the medieval fantasy D&D is meant to emulate, just shows how shallow the modern aesthetic of D&D is. It is garish, glaring, grating. None but the most mindless consumer, raised on fast-talking, brightly colored YouTube cartoons and nothing else, can enjoy this. Everyone seems to be pretending to, because D&D is a lifestyle brand to these people, and they will follow it to its grave. They are among the few. The new player's handbook, for all the work put into it, sold only a few thousand copies. Even the lamest of the new D&D module books sold at least tens of thousands. Surely this new player's book will sell more, but as it is a more paused, more woke, whatever you want to call it, version of D and D5E. And like so much else, it's a harbinger of what is to come.